Which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? In addition to being an accomplished psychologist himself, Francis Cecil Sumner was a blink, increasing the opportunity for black students to study psychology, helping to found the psychology department at Howard University, a historically black university, in 1930. So answer choice A says proponent of. This seems to be correct because proponent of could also mean supporter of, and Sumner was a supporter of increasing the opportunity for black students to study psychology because he founded the psychology department at Howard University. So A seems to be the correct answer. B, supplement to. This is incorrect because supplement to means addition to, but Sumner wasn't an addition to increasing the opportunity for black students to study psychology, because this doesn't make sense in the context of this passage. So B is incorrect. C, beneficiary of. This is incorrect because this would imply that Sumner received help from his own efforts. So C is incorrect. D, distraction for. This is incorrect because it wouldn't make sense to say that Sumner was a distraction for increasing the opportunity for black students to study psychology because he founded the psychology department at Howard University. So D is incorrect, and the correct answer is A. Which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? For her 2021 art installation, Anthem, Wu Sing joined forces with singer and composer Beverly Glenn Copeland to produce a piece that critics found truly blank. They praised Sing for creatively transforming a museum rotunda into a dynamic exhibit by projecting filmed images of Glenn Copeland onto a massive 84-foot curtain and filling the space with the sound of his and other voices singing. So answer choice A says restrained. This is incorrect because restrained implies limited or not extravagant or showy, but the critics found Sing's piece creative and emphasized how it transformed the museum rotunda into a dynamic exhibit, and it highlighted how there were huge images and there's lots of sounds, so restrained wouldn't make sense here. So A is incorrect. B, inventive. This seems to be correct because inventive implies creativity, and the critics praised Sing for her creativity as she transformed the museum rotunda into a dynamic exhibit. So B seems to be the correct answer. C, inexplicable. This is incorrect because inexplicable implies that the critics could not describe or interpret the art installation, but the second part of the sentence after the colon shows how they praised Sing for her creativity and how they emphasize how there were huge images and lots of sounds. So inexplicable wouldn't make sense here. D, mystifying. This is incorrect because the critics didn't find the art installation bewildering or perplexing. Instead, they praised it for being creative and inventive. So D is incorrect, and the correct answer is B. Which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? Scholarly discussions of gender in Shakespeare's comedies often celebrate the rebellion of the playwright's characters against the rigid expectations blank by Elizabethan society. Most of the comedies end in marriage, with characters returning to their socially dictated gender roles after previously defying them, but there are some notable exceptions. So, answer choice A says interjected. This is incorrect because interjected implies that it's inserted between other things, but this would not make sense in the context of this text, so A is wrong. B, committed. This is incorrect because committed implies entrusted to, but this would not make sense in the context of the passage, where it would say that scholarly discussions of gender in Shakespeare's comedies often celebrate the rebellion of the playwright's characters against the rigid expectations entrusted by Elizabethan society. So this does not make sense, so B is incorrect. C, illustrated. This is incorrect because illustrated means clarified with examples, but the rebellion of the playwright's characters against the rigid expectations were not clarified with examples by Elizabethan society. They're more so laid down by. So C is incorrect. D, prescribed. This is the correct answer because prescribed implies that these rigid expectations were rules laid down by Elizabethan society, which makes sense in this context. So D is the correct answer. Which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? The work of Kiowa painter T.C. Cannon derives its power in part from the tension among his blank influences. Classic European portraiture with its realistic treatment of faces, the American pop art movement with its vivid colors, and flat style, the intertribal painting style that rejects the effect of depth typically achieved through shading and perspective. So enter choice A says complementary. This is incorrect because complementary implies that the different influences work together or help each other out, but it clearly shows that there's tension among these different influences. So A is incorrect. B, unknown. This is incorrect because this implies that these influences are unknown, but the second part of the sentence shows that there are three different influences: the classic European portraiture, American pop art movement, and intertribal flat style. So these influences are known. So B is incorrect. C, disparate. This seems to be correct because disparate implies that these influences are distinct and not similar, and this second part of the sentence proves this, where it describes the differences between the two, where European portraiture is realistic, the American pop art movement is vivid, and the intertribal flat style rejects the use of shading and perspective to achieve depth. So C seems to be the correct answer. D, interchangeable. This is incorrect because the second part of the sentence emphasizes how these different influences are differing from one another, so it wouldn't make sense for these influences to be able to change places with one another. So D is incorrect, and the correct answer is C. Based on the text, how would Graeber and Wigner, text 2, most likely respond to the conventional wisdom presented in text 1? Text 1. Conventional wisdom long held that human social systems evolved in stages, beginning with hunter-gatherers forming small bands of members with roughly equal status. The shift to agriculture about 12,000 years ago sparked population growth that led to the emergence of groups with hierarchical structures, associations of clans first, then chiefdoms, and finally bureaucratic states. So text 1 highlights how human social systems evolved in stages, and in a linear progression, where there were first associations of clans, then chiefdoms, and then bureaucratic states. Text 2. In a 2020 book, anthropologist David Graeber and archaeologist David Wigner maintain that humans have always been socially flexible, alternately forming systems based on hierarchy and collective ones with decentralized leadership. The authors point to evidence that as far back as 50,000 years ago, some hunter-gatherers adjusted their social structures seasonally, at times dispersing in small groups, but also assembling into communities that included esteemed individuals. So text 2 highlights that human social systems were flexible, where they switched between different ones, sometimes based on hierarchy, and other times on collective ones with decentralized leadership. So option A says, by conceding the importance of hierarchical systems, but asserting the greater significance of decentralized collective societies. This is incorrect because text 2 does not discuss how there's a greater significance of decentralized collective societies. Instead, it discusses how human social systems have been flexible. So A is incorrect. B, by disputing the idea that development and social structures have followed a linear progression through distinct stages. This seems to be correct because text A says that human social systems evolved in linear progression, whereas text 2 says that their social systems have been flexible, where they switch between different systems. So B seems to be the correct answer. C, by acknowledging the hierarchical roles likely were a part of social systems before the rise of agriculture. This is incorrect because text 2 does not say that hierarchical roles weren't part of the social system before the rise of agriculture. Instead, it points to the fact that there might have been hierarchical roles before the rise of agriculture. So C is incorrect. D, by challenging the assumption that groupings of hunter-gatherers were amongst the earliest forms of social structure. This is incorrect because the focus of text 2 is how human social systems have been flexible, not on how the groupings of hunter-gatherers were among the earliest forms of social structure. So D is incorrect, and the correct answer is B. Which choice best states the main idea of the text? In 1934, physicist Eugene Wigner posited the existence of a crystal consisting entirely of electrons in a honeycomb-like structure. The so-called Wigner crystal remained largely conjecture, however, until Feng Wang and colleagues announced in 2021 that they had captured an image of one. The researchers trapped electrons between two semiconductors and then cooled the apparatus, causing the electrons to settle into a crystalline structure. By inserting an ultra-thin sheet of graphene above the crystal, the researchers could obtain an impression, the first visual confirmation of the Wigner crystal. So option A says, researchers have attained the most definitive evidence to date of the existence of the Wigner crystal. So the text highlights how the Wigner crystal was first posited in 1934, but it was mostly conjecture, until another group of scientists ran an experiment and obtained the first visual confirmation of the Wigner crystal. So the text emphasizes that this was the first visual confirmation of the Wigner crystal. So A seems to be the right answer. B. Researchers have identified an innovative new method for working with unusual crystalline structures. This is incorrect because the text discusses only the Wigner crystal, not other unusual crystalline structures. So B is incorrect. C. Graphene is the most important of the components required to capture an image of a Wigner crystal. This is incorrect because the text doesn't describe the importance of graphene, and neither does it describe the relative importance of the other components required to capture an image of the Wigner crystal. So C is incorrect. D. It's difficult to acquire an image of a Wigner crystal because of the crystal's honeycomb structure. This is incorrect because the text does not mention that it was difficult to acquire an image of the Wigner crystal because of the its honeycomb structure. So D is incorrect, and the correct answer is A. According to the text, why was Wang and his team's discovery of the Pteropteris shiosenesis fossil significant? For many years, the only existing fossil evidence of Mixopterid Euripterids, an extinct family of large aquatic arthropods known as sea scorpions and related to modern arachnids and horseshoe crabs, came from 4 species living on the paleocontinent of Laurasia. In a discovery that expands our understanding of the geological distribution of Mixopterids, paleontologist Bo Wang and others have identified fossilized remains of a new Mixopterid species, Pteropteris shiosenesis, that lived over 400 million years ago on the paleocontinent of Gondwana. So the text here highlights how the previous fossil evidence of the Mixopterids were from the paleocontinent of Laurasia, but the second sentence highlights how the new fossil expands their understanding of geological distribution of the Mixopterids, highlighting that this new one lived on the paleocontinent of Gondwana. So option A says, your fossil constitutes the first evidence found by scientists that Mixopterids lived more than 400 million years ago. This is incorrect because in the text it doesn't say that the other Mixopterids didn't live over 400 million years ago, so A is incorrect. B. A fossil helps establish that Mixopterids are more closely related to modern arachnids and horseshoe crabs than previously thought. This is incorrect because, like A, the text doesn't say that this new fossil helps establish that these Mixopterids are more closely related to modern arachnids and horseshoe crabs. So B is incorrect. C. The fossil helps establish a more accurate timeline of the evolution of Mixopterids on the paleocontinents of Laurasia and Gondwana. This is incorrect because although it does show that the Mixopterids lived on Gondwana and Laurasia, it doesn't say that there is an accurate timeline of evolution of the Mixopterids from Laurasia to Gondwana. So C is incorrect. D. The fossil constitutes the first evidence found by scientists that Mixopterids existed outside the paleocontinent of Laurasia. This seems to be correct because the first sentence highlights how the 4 previous fossils of Mixopterids lived only on Laurasia, but the new fossil lived on the paleocontinent of Gondwana. So D is the correct answer. According to the text, what is true about Mother? The following text is adapted from Edith Nesbit's 1906 novel, The Railway Children. Mother did not spend all her time in paying dull visits to dull ladies, and sitting dully at home waiting for dull ladies to pay visits to her. She was almost always there, ready to play with the children and read to them, and help them to their home lessons. Besides this, she used to write stories for them while they were at school, and read them aloud after tea, and she always made up funny bits pieces of poetry for their birthdays and for other great occasions. So answer choice A says, she wishes that more ladies would visit her. This is incorrect because the first sentence says that she did not spend all her time in paying dull visits to dull ladies or sit at home dully to wait for dull ladies to pay visits to her. So the text highlights that she thought the idea of visiting other ladies and them visiting her was dull and boring. So A is incorrect. B. Birthdays are her favorite special occasion. This is incorrect because although it does say that she made poetry on the children's birthday, it doesn't say that these were her favorite special occasion. So B is incorrect. C. She creates stories and poems for her children. This is incorrect because it says here, besides this, she used to write stories for them while they were at school and read them aloud after tea. And she always made up funny pieces of poetry for their birthdays and for other great occasions. So C seems to be the correct answer. D. Reading to her children is her favorite activity. This is incorrect for the same reason as B, because the text doesn't suggest that her reading to her children was her favorite activity. Rather, it does not compare any between her activities. So D is incorrect. And the correct answer is C. Which quotation from The Young Girl most effectively illustrates the claim? The Young Girl is a 1920 short story by Catherine Mansfield. In the story, the narrator takes an unnamed 17-year-old girl and her younger brother out for a meal. In describing the teenager, Mansfield frequently contrasts the character's pleasant appearance with her unpleasant attitude, as when Mansfield writes of the teenager, blank. So the claim here is that the character has a pleasant appearance but an unpleasant attitude. So the correct option should reflect this. So option A says, I heard her murmur, I can't bear flowers on a table. They had evidently been giving her intense pain, for she positively closed her eyes as I moved them away. This is incorrect for two reasons. One, it doesn't discuss her pleasant appearance, and two, it doesn't show her unpleasant attitude, where her dislike for flowers may just be that she doesn't like flowers, not that she has an unpleasant attitude. So A is incorrect. B. While we waited, she took out a little gold powder box with a mirror in the lid, shook the poor little puff as though she loathed it, and dabbed her lovely nose. This seems to be correct because it shows her pleasant appearance, as it says dabbed her lovely nose, and her unpleasant attitude, where it says that she shook the poor little puff as though she loathed it. So B seems to be the correct answer. C. I saw, after that, she couldn't stand this place a moment longer, and indeed she jumped up and turned away while I went through the vulgar act of paying for the tea. This is incorrect because, like A, it doesn't show her pleasant appearance, and although it does show her unpleasant attitude, where she doesn't like this place, and so C is incorrect. D. She didn't even take her gloves off. She lowered her eyes and drummed on the table. When a faint violin sounded, she winced and bit her lip again. Silence. This is incorrect because, like C, it doesn't show her pleasant appearance, although it does show her unpleasant attitude. So D is incorrect, and the correct answer is B. Which choice best describes data from the table that support Barrett and Rayfield's suggestion? The largest tyrannosaurids, the family of carnivorous dinosaurs that include Tarbosaurus, Albertosaurus, and most famously Tyrannosaurus rex, are thought to have had the strongest bites of any land animals in Earth's history. Determining the bite force of an extinct animals can be difficult, however, and paleontologists Paul Barrett and Emily Rayfield have suggested that an estimate of dinosaurs' bite force may be significantly influenced by the methodology used in generating that estimate. So the suggestion from Barrett and Rayfield is that the methodology significantly influences the estimate. So option A says, the study by Mears used body mass scaling and produced the lowest estimated maximum bite force, while the study by Cost et al. Used muscular and skeletal modeling and produced the highest estimated maximum. This is incorrect because the study by Mears did not produce the lowest maximum estimated bite force. It actually produced the highest, which is from 183,000 to 235,000. And the one used by Cost et al. Wasn't the highest. It was more towards the middle, being 335,000 to 63,000. So A is incorrect. B. In this study, Gignac and Erickson used Toth-Boone interaction analysis to produce an estimated bite force range with a minimum of 8,000 newtons and a maximum of 34,000 newtons. This is incorrect because this does not support the suggestion, where it says the suggestion being that the bite force is significantly influenced by the methodology used in generating that estimate. So B is incorrect. C. The bite force estimates produced by Bates and Falkingham and by Cost et al. Were similar to each other. So Bates and Falkingham, so 35,000 to 57,000, and Cost et al. 35,000 to 63,000. So yes, they are similar to one another. While the estimates produced by Mears and by Gignac and Erickson each differed substantially from any other estimate. So Gignac and Erickson had 8,000 to 34,000 bite force, and Mears was 183,000 to 235,000. And these two had different estimation methods. So C seems to be the correct answer because it shows that these two varied by so much, and this may be because of the estimation method. And while these two estimation methods were the same, that these estimated bite force is very similar. So C seems to be the correct answer. D. The estimated maximum bite force produced by Cost et al. Exceeded the estimated maximum produced by Bates and Falkingham, even though both groups of researchers used the same method to generate their estimates. This is incorrect because the suggestion says that the methodology significantly influences the estimate, while here it just compares two estimates of this using the same methodology. So D is incorrect, and the correct answer is C. Which finding, if true, will most directly undermine Foster's hypothesis? When digging for clams, their primary food, sea otters damage the roots of eelgrass plants growing on the sea floor. Near Vancouver Island in Canada, the otter population is large and well established, yet the eelgrass meadows are healthier than those found elsewhere off Canada's coast. To explain this, conservation scientist Aaron Foster and colleagues compared the Vancouver Island meadow to meadows where otters are absent or were reintroduced only recently. Finding that the Vancouver Island meadows have a more diverse gene pool than the others do, Foster hypothesized that damage to eelgrass roots increase the plant's rate of sexual reproduction. This in turn boosts genetic diversity, which benefits the meadow's health overall. So the claim here is that the damage to the eelgrass roots boosts the meadow's health overall. So answer choice A says, at some sites in the study, eelgrass meadows are found near otter populations that are small and have only recently been reintroduced. This is incorrect because this does not say that the eelgrass meadows were harmed by the otter populations, which would undermine Foster's hypothesis. So A is incorrect. B. At several sites not included in the study, there are large, well-established sea otter populations, but no eelgrass meadows. This is incorrect because this does not say that the sea otters themselves hurt the eelgrass meadows. It simply says that there are no eelgrass meadows in these populations, or these areas. C. At several sites not included in the study, eelgrass meadows' health correlates negatively with the length of residence and size of otter populations. This seems to be correct because the Foster's hypothesis is that the damage to eelgrass roots by otters improves the meadow's health overall. But to undermine the hypothesis, you would have to show that the otter would damage the eelgrass meadow's health overall. And this is what it says. It says that eelgrass meadow's health correlates negatively with the length of residence and size of otter populations. So C seems to be the correct answer. D. At some sites in the study, the health of plants unrelated to eelgrass correlates negatively with the length of residence and the size of otter populations. So this is incorrect because the hypothesis is focused on eelgrass, not on other plants, so D is automatically wrong. So the correct answer is C. Which finding, if true, would most directly support the researcher's hypothesis? In the mountains of Brazil, Barbensia tomentosa and Barbensia macrantha, two plants in the Veloziaceae family, established themselves on soilless, nutrient-poor patches of quartzite rock. Plant ecologists Ana Abrajo and Patricia D. Brito Costa used microscopic analysis to determine that the roots of B. tomentosa and B. macrantha, which grow directly into the quartzite, have clusters of fine hairs near the root tip. Further analysis indicated that these hairs secrete both malic and citric acids. The researchers hypothesized that plants depend on dissolving underlying rock with these acids, as the process not only creates channels for continued growth, but also releases phosphates that provide the vital nutrient, phosphorus. So the hypothesis here is that the plants depend on dissolving the underlying rock to release phosphates, which provide nutrients like phosphorus. So option A says, other species in the Veloziaceae family are found in terrains with more soil, but have root structures similar to those of B. tomentosa and B. macrantha. So this is incorrect because this does not support the researcher's hypothesis. Instead, it focuses on other species in the same family. So A is incorrect. B. Though B. tomentosa and B. macrantha both secrete citric and malic acids, each species provides the acids in different proportions. So this is incorrect because this focuses on them secreting the acids in different proportions, whereas the hypothesis is about how the plants depend on dissolving underlying rock for their nutrients. So B is incorrect. C. The roots of B. tomentosa and B. macrantha carve new entry points into rocks even when cracks in the surface are readily available. This seems to be correct because it supports the hypothesis, which shows that the plants depend on dissolving the underlying rock not only for continued growth, but for the acids it releases. And so the roots of B. tomentosa and B. macrantha carve new entry points into rocks even when cracks in the surface are readily available, supports the researcher's hypothesis. So C seems to be the correct answer. D. B. tomentosa and B. macrantha thrive even when transferred to the surfaces of rocks that do not contain phosphates. This is incorrect because this disproves the hypothesis, which is that the plants depend on dissolving the underlying rock for the nutrients like phosphorus. But here it shows that when they are transferred to surfaces of rock that do not contain phosphates, they still thrive. So D is incorrect, and the correct answer is C. Which choice most logically completes the text? Ancestral Puebloans, the civilization from which present-day Pueblo tribes descended, emerged as early as 1500 BCE in an area of what is now the southwestern United States, and dispersed suddenly in the late 1200 CE, abandoning established villages with systems for farming crops and turkeys. Recent analysis comparing turkey remains at Mesa Verde, one such village in southern Colorado, to samples from modern-day turkey populations in the Rio Grande Valley of north-central New Mexico determined that the latter birds descended in part from turkeys cultivated at Mesa Verde, which shared genetic markers appearing only after 1280. Thus, researchers concluded that blank. So, answer choice A says, conditions of the terrains in Rio Grande Valley and Mesa Verde had greater similarities in the past than they do today. This is incorrect because the text doesn't compare the terrains of Rio Grande Valley and the Mesa Verde. Rather, they talk about ancestral Puebloans and their farming practices. So A is incorrect. B. Some ancestral Puebloans migrated to the Rio Grande Valley in the late 1200s and carried farming practices with them. This seems to be correct because here it says that the latter birds descended in part from turkeys cultivated at Mesa Verde. So it's saying that the birds in Rio Grande Valley were descended in part from turkeys cultivated at Mesa Verde. So this shows that the ancestor Puebloans could have migrated to the Rio Grande Valley in the late 1200s and carried their farming practices with them. So B seems to be the correct answer. C. Indigenous peoples living in the Rio Grande Valley primarily planted crops and did not cultivate turkeys before 1280. This is incorrect because the text doesn't say that they didn't cultivate crops. They didn't cultivate turkeys before 1280, and neither does it say that they primarily planted crops. So C is incorrect. D. The ancestral Puebloans of Mesa Verde likely adopted the farming practices of indigenous peoples living in other regions. This is incorrect for the same reason as C, because this text doesn't mention that they adopted the farming practices of indigenous peoples living in other regions. Rather, it suggests that they kept their farming practices. So D is incorrect, and the correct answer is B. Which choice most logically completes the text? Ratified by more than 90 countries, the Nagoya Protocol is an international agreement ensuring that indigenous communities are compensated when their agricultural resources and knowledge of wild plants and animals are utilized by agricultural corporations. However, the protocol has shortcomings. For example, it allows corporations to insist that their agreements with communities to conduct research on the commercial uses of the community's resources and knowledge remain confidential. Therefore, some indigenous advocates express concern that the protocol may have the unintended effect of blank. So answer choice A says, diminishing the monetary reward that corporations might derive from their agreements with indigenous communities. This is incorrect because the text shows that it is the indigenous communities that may not be compensated properly, not the corporations. So A is incorrect. B. Limiting the research that corporations conduct on the resources of the indigenous communities with which they have signed agreements. This is incorrect because the text does not say that the corporations are limited in the research that they can conduct. So B is incorrect. C. Preventing the independent observers from determining whether the agreements guarantee equitable compensations for indigenous communities. This seems to be correct because the text shows the corporations insist that their research remain confidential and that this may have the unintended effect of preventing independent observers from determining whether the agreements guarantee equitable compensation for indigenous communities. So C seems to be the correct answer. D. Discouraging indigenous communities from learning new methods for harvesting plants and animals from their corporate partners. This is incorrect because the text shows that the corporations learn new methods for harvesting plants and animals from their corporate partners, not that the indigenous communities learn these from their corporate partners. So D is incorrect, and the correct answer is C. Which choice most logically completes the text? The domestic sweet potato, Ipomea batatas, descends from a wild plant native to South America. It also populates the Polynesian islands, where evidence confirms that native Hawaiians and other indigenous peoples were cultivating the plant centuries before seafaring first occurred over the thousands of miles of ocean separating them from South America. To explain how the sweet potato was first introduced in Polynesia, botanist Pablo Munoz Rodriguez and colleagues analyzed the DNA of numerous varieties of the plant, concluding that Polynesian varieties diverged from South American ones over 300,000 years ago. Given that Polynesia was peopled only in the last 3,000 years, the team concluded that blank. So option A says, the cultivation of the sweet potato in Polynesia likely predates its cultivation in South America. This is incorrect because the text does not suggest the time where sweet potatoes were cultivated in either Polynesia or in South America, so A is incorrect. B. Polynesian peoples likely acquired the sweet potato from South American peoples only within the last 3,000 years. This is incorrect because the text clearly says that the Polynesian varieties of sweet potatoes diverged from South American ones over 100,000 years ago. And since Polynesia was peopled only in the last 3,000 years, it's therefore not possible for the Polynesian people to acquire the sweet potato from South American people. So B is incorrect. C. Human activity likely played no role in the introduction of the sweet potato in Polynesia. This seems to be correct because the text suggests this, where it shows that the Polynesian varieties of sweet potatoes diverged from South American ones over 100,000 years ago, and that Polynesia was only peopled in the last 3,000 years. Therefore, it's not possible that human activity played a role in the introduction of sweet potato in Polynesia. So C seems to be the correct answer. D. Polynesian sweet potato varieties likely descended from a single South American variety that was domesticated, not wild. This is incorrect because the first sentence shows that the domestic sweet potato descends from a wild plant native to South America. So D is incorrect. And the correct answer is C. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? In Death Valley National Park's racetrack playa, a flat, dry lake bed are 162 rocks, some weighing less than a pound, but others almost 700 pounds, that move periodically from place to place, seemingly of their own volition. Racetrack-like trails in the blank, mysterious migration. So answer choice A says, playas, sediment marks the rocks, ''s. This is incorrect because this does not show the possessiveness for playas, where it is the playas sediment, not multiple playas sediment. So A is incorrect. B. Playas, ''s, sediment mark the rocks, no apostrophe. This is incorrect because although the apostrophe is used correctly in playas, which is before the S, there's no apostrophe used for the rocks, where there should be apostrophe after the S to show that there are multiple rocks and they each have their own mysterious migration. So B is incorrect. C. Playas apostrophe S sediment mark the rocks apostrophe after the S. This seems to be correct because it properly shows that there's one playa and it has its sediment marker, and that there are multiple rocks and they each have their own mysterious migration. So C seems to be the correct answer. D. Playas apostrophe after the S sediment mark the rocks apostrophe after the S. This is incorrect because this implies that there are multiple playas, but there's only one playa. So D is incorrect, and the correct answer is C. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? Nigerian author Buchi Emecheda's celebrated little oeuvre includes The Joys of Motherhood, a novel about the changing roles of women in the 1950s, Blink, a television play about the private struggles of a newlywed couple in Nigeria, and Head Above Water, her autobiography. So answer choice A says Lagos, comma, a kind of marriage, comma. This is incorrect because although the comma after a kind of marriage properly separates the title phrase from the supplementary phrase after it, the comma after Lagos is incorrect because this is a complex series and it uses semicolons to separate the elements. So instead of a comma here, there should be a semicolon. So A is incorrect. B. Lagos, semicolon, a kind of marriage, comma. This seems to be correct because it properly uses a semicolon to separate the elements in the complex series, and a comma to separate the title phrase from the supplementary phrase after it. So B seems to be the correct answer. C. Lagos, comma, a kind of marriage, colon. This is incorrect because there should be semicolon here, and the colon here doesn't make sense because there should be some... The colon here is used to elaborate further information, but this is not the case here, so C is incorrect. D. Lagos, semicolon, a kind of marriage. This is incorrect because although it does use a semicolon properly, there is no punctuation after a kind of marriage to separate this phrase from the supplementary phrase after it. So D is incorrect, and the correct answer is B. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? In 2016, engineer Vanessa Galvez oversaw the installation of 164 bioswales, vegetated channels designed to absorb and divert stormwater along the street of Queens, New York, by reducing the runoff flowing into city sewers, Blink. So a key point here is that after this phrase, the subject, bioswales, should be placed immediately after it to specify and clarify that it is the noun or subject of the sentence. So option A says, the mitigation of both street flooding and the resulting pollution of nearby waterways has been achieved by bioswales. This is incorrect because this results in a dangling modifier where it's unclear what the subject or noun is, and this would be fixed if bioswales were put towards the beginning of the sentence. So A is incorrect. B. The bioswales have mitigated both street flooding and resulting pollution of nearby waterways. This seems to be correct because it properly places the bioswales immediately after the comma to show that bioswales is the subject or noun of the sentence, so B seems to be correct. C. The bioswales mitigation of both street flooding and the resulting pollution of nearby waterways has been achieved. This is incorrect because this doesn't specify the subject or noun, making it unclear because this highlights the bioswales mitigation of both street flooding, not the bioswales, so C is incorrect. D. Both street flooding and the resulting pollution of nearby waterways have been mitigated by bioswales. This is a ding modifier like C and A, and therefore it is incorrect. But this would be fixed if bioswales were placed more towards the beginning of the sentence. So D is incorrect. The correct answer is B. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? From afar, African-American fiber artist Bisa Butler's portraits look like paintings. Their depictions of human faces, bodies, and clothing so intricate that it seems only a fine brush could have rendered them. When viewed up close, however, the portraits reveal themselves to be blank, stitching barely visible among the thousands of pieces of printed microcut fabric. So option A says quilts, comma, and the. This is incorrect because this and would interrupt the flow of the passage, and a conjunction here is unnecessary. So A is incorrect. B. Quilts, comma, the. This is correct because this properly splits the sentence into two parts, where the first part is the main clause, and the second part is a supplementary phrase, and comma here accurately separates the two. So B seems to be the correct answer. C. Quilts, semicolon, the. This is incorrect because their semicolons are used to split two independent clauses, but here there's only one independent clause and then one supplementary phrase, so a semicolon can't work here. So C is incorrect. D. Quilts, period, the. This is incorrect because this would split the sentence into two, and the second sentence would be a sentence fragment, and therefore D is incorrect. And the correct answer is B. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? Compared to that of aluminum glass, blank, silica glass atoms are so far apart that they are unable to reform bonds after being separated. So a key point here is that after the comma, the subject or noun should be placed immediately after to specify what that subject or noun is of the sentence. So option A says, silica glass is at a significant disadvantage due to its more dispersed atomic arrangement. So this is incorrect because this implies the subject or noun is silica glass, but instead it's silica glass's atomic arrangement. So A is incorrect. B. Silica glass has a more dispersed atomic arrangement, resulting in a significant disadvantage. This is incorrect for the same reason as A, because it should be silica glass's atomic arrangement, not silica glass. So B is incorrect. C. A significant disadvantage of silica glass is that its atomic arrangement is more dispersed. This is incorrect for the same reason as B and A, where it should have a silica glass's atomic arrangement right after the comma, but instead it has something else, resulting in a dangling modifier. So C is incorrect. D. Silica glass's atomic arrangement is more dispersed, resulting in a significant disadvantage. This is correct because it properly compares alumina glass's atomic arrangement to silica glass's atomic arrangement, and it clearly establishes that silica glass's atomic arrangement is the noun or subject of the sentence. So D is correct. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? In the historical novel The Surrender Tree, Cuban-American author Margarita Engel uses poetry rather than prose, blank, the true story of Cuban folk hero Rosa La Bayamesa. So option A says, tells. So this is incorrect, because if you were to place this into the sentence, it would say, Margarita Engel uses poetry rather than prose, tells the true story of Cuban folk hero Rosa La Bayamesa. Since this obviously doesn't make sense, so A is incorrect. B. Told. This is incorrect because if you were to place this in a sentence, it would say, Margarita Engel uses poetry rather than prose, told the true story of. So this, like A, doesn't make sense. C. Is telling. So if you were to place this in the sentence, it would say, Margarita Engel uses poetry rather than prose, is telling the true story of. This is incorrect. D. To tell. This seems to be correct because if you place it in the sentence, it would say, Margarita Engel uses poetry rather than prose to tell the true story of Cuban folk hero Rosa La Bayamesa. So this D is the correct answer. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? Sociologist Elton Okinawa sits on the review board tasked with adding new sites to the Hawaii Register of Historic Places, which includes Pilihani, Ohio, and the Opecas Road Bridge. Okinawa doesn't make such decisions, blank. All historical designations must be approved by a group of 9 other experts from the field of architecture, archaeology, history, and Hawaiian culture. So, option A says, single-handedly, comma, however, semicolon. This seems to be correct because there are two parts of the sentence, there are two independent clauses, and the comma here separates the supplementary adverb from the first main clause, and the semicolon properly separates the two independent clauses. So A seems to be the correct answer. B. Single-handedly, semicolon, however, comma. This is incorrect because this places the however in the second part of the sentence where it wouldn't make sense, whereas it should be placed in the first part of the sentence to make more sense. So if this would be correct if the semicolon and comma were to switch places. So B is incorrect. C, single-handedly, comma, however, comma. This is incorrect because this results in a comma splice, where a comma attempts to connect two independent clauses without a conjunction. So C is incorrect. D, single-handedly, however. This is incorrect because this simply results in a run-on sentence. So D is incorrect. And the correct answer is A. Which choice completes the text with the most logical transition? When Chinese director Chloe Zhao accepted the Oscar in 2021 for her film Nomadland, she made Academy Award history. Blank. Only one other woman, Catherine Bigelow of the United States, had been named the Best Director at the Oscars, making Zhao the second woman and the first Asian woman to win the award. So, A, as a result. This is incorrect because the first part of the second sentence discusses what happened previously, before Zhao got the award, so as a result wouldn't make sense here. So A is incorrect. B, previously. This seems to be correct because, as before, the second part of the first part of the second sentence discusses what happened before Zhao won the award, which is talking about how Catherine Bigelow was the only other woman who won the award. So previously would make sense here. So B seems to be the correct answer. C, however, this is incorrect because this implies that the second sentence will contrast the first sentence, but this is not the case. So C is incorrect. D, likewise. This is incorrect because this implies that the second sentence will be in the same subject and the same topic as the first sentence, and this is incorrect because the second sentence elaborates on what was said in the first sentence. So D is incorrect, and the correct answer is B. Which choice completes the text with the most logical transition? Researchers Helena Milhelejevic-Brent, Lucia Santamaria, and Marco Tulny report that while mathematicians may have traditionally worked alone, evidence points to a shift in the opposite direction. Blank, mathematicians are choosing to collaborate with their peers, a trend illustrated by a rise in the number of mathematicians publications credited to multiple authors. So answer choice A says similarly. This is incorrect because this implies that the claim in the second sentence is separate to, but similar to the claim in the previous sentence, but the second sentence elaborates what was said in the first sentence. So A is incorrect. B, for this reason. This is incorrect because the second sentence elaborates what was said in the previous sentence, and the first sentence does not give a reason for why there's a shift. It simply says that there is a shift. So B is incorrect. C, furthermore, this is incorrect because this implies that the second sentence will add on to the claim in the first sentence, but instead it elaborates on the claim in the first sentence. So C is incorrect. D, increasingly. This is correct because increasingly implies that there's a trend or a shift to mathematicians working together, and this is correct because the second sentence highlights a trend illustrated by the rise in the number of mathematic publications credited to multiple authors. So D is the correct answer. Which choice completes the text with the most logical transition? When soil becomes contaminated by toxic metals, it can be removed from the ground and disposed of in a landfill. Blank. Contaminated soil can be detoxified via photoremediation. Plants that can withstand high concentration of metals absorb the pollutants and store them in their shoots, which are then cut off and safely disposed of, preserving the health of the plants. So, option A says alternatively. This seems to be correct because alternatively implies that the second sentence will offer a new method to the one already offered in the first sentence, and this is correct because this correctly explains what was said in the passage, where the first sentence offers one method and the second sentence offers another method. So A seems to be the correct answer. B, specifically. This is incorrect because specifically implies the second sentence will elaborate on what was said in the first sentence, but this is not the case, where the second sentence establishes a new method already to the one established in the first sentence. So B is incorrect. C, for example, this is incorrect for the same reason as B, because the second sentence does not elaborate on what was said in the first sentence, it offers a new method to what was already offered in the first sentence. So C is incorrect. D, as a result, this is incorrect because the second sentence is not a consequence or a result of what was said in the first sentence. So D is incorrect, and the correct answer is A. The The student wants to emphasize the decline in unique apple varieties in the U.S. and specify why this decline has occurred. Which choice most effectively uses relevant information from the notes to accomplish these goals? While researching a topic, a student has taken the following notes. In the late 1890s, over 14,000 unique apple varieties were grown in the U.S. The rise of industrial agriculture in the mid-1900s narrowed the range of commercially grown crops. Thousands of apple varieties considered less suitable for commercial growth were lost. Today, only 15 apple varieties dominate the market, making up 90% of apples purchased in the U.S. The Lost Apple Project, based in Washington State, attempts to find and grow lost apple varieties. So, option A says, the Lost Apple Project is dedicated to finding some of the apple varieties lost following a shift in agricultural practices in the mid-1900s. This is incorrect because this does not emphasize the decline in new apple varieties. It only says why this decline has occurred and describes the Lost Apple Project. So A is incorrect. B. While over 14,000 apple varieties were grown in the U.S. in the late 1890s, only 15 unique varieties make up most of the apples sold today. This is incorrect because although it does emphasize the decline in unique apple varieties, it does not specify why this decline has occurred. So B is incorrect. C. Since the rise of industrial agriculture, U.S. farmers have mainly grown the same few unique apple varieties, resulting in the loss of thousands of varieties less suitable for commercial growth. This seems to be correct because it emphasizes the decline in unique apple varieties by saying that there were thousands of varieties that were lost because they were less suitable for commercial growth, and explains why this decline has occurred, which is because U.S. farmers have mainly grown the same few unique apple varieties. So C seems to be the correct answer. D. As industrial agriculture rose to prominence in the mid-1900s, the number of crops selected for cultivation decreased dramatically. This is incorrect because this does not emphasize the decline in unique apple varieties. So D is incorrect, and the correct answer is C. The student wants to introduce Catherine Halverson's book to an audience already familiar with the Atlantic Monthly. Which choice most effectively uses relevant information from the notes to accomplish this goal? While researching a topic, a student has taken the following notes. The Atlantic Monthly magazine was first published in 1857. The magazine focused on politics, art, and literature. In 2019, historian Catherine Halverson published the book Faraway Woman and the Atlantic Monthly. Its subject is female authors whose autobiographies appeared in the magazine in the early 1900s. One of the authors discussed is Juanita Harrison. So option A says, Catherine Halverson's Faraway Woman and the Atlantic Monthly discusses female authors whose autobiographies appeared in the magazine in the early 1900s. This seems to be correct because it introduces Catherine Halverson's book, Faraway Woman and the Atlantic Monthly, and it already emphasizes that this is to an audience that already knows or is familiar with the Atlantic Monthly by not showing any information about the Atlantic Monthly and referring it to as a magazine. So A seems to be the correct answer. B. A magazine called the Atlantic Monthly, referred to in Catherine Halverson's book title, was first published in 1857. This is incorrect because this does not introduce Catherine Halverson's book. It just talks about the Atlantic Monthly, so B is incorrect. C. Faraway Woman and the Atlantic Monthly features contributors to the Atlantic Monthly, first published in 1857 as a magazine focused on politics, arts, and literature. This is incorrect because the student wants to introduce to an audience that already is familiar with the Atlantic Monthly, so there's no need to say any information about the Atlantic Monthly. So C is incorrect. D. An author discussed by Catherine Halverson is Juanita Harrison, whose autobiography appeared in the Atlantic Monthly in the early 1900s. This is incorrect because this does not introduce the book that Catherine Halverson wrote, which is The Faraway Woman and the Atlantic Monthly, so D is incorrect. The correct answer is A.